We begin the current Daf Mesechtes Gitin Daf Mem Vav. We begin on the bottom of the Mem Hey and Beis, 11 lines up in the bottom of the Yamid. Resume again the Mishnah, which is the series of Mishnayos that are talking about Tikkun Olam. Once we mentioned regarding Mesechtes Gitin, a Tikkun Olam, so we went through a whole bunch of Mishnayos regarding Tikkun Olam, and our Mishnah continues on the theme, going back to the theme of women again, of wives, regarding divorce, a Tikkun Olam regarding that of a woman. Shit corresponds to Kazakh and Cheskel turn to Daf Chaim. We're joining today's daf. Some discuss in today's daf are Hamoitzias Ishtar. Someone says he's getting rid of his wife, Mishum Shemra, because there's bad rumors going on about her. Allah is liyachs, he's not allowed to remarry her. I mean, generally, when you divorce your wife, you're allowed to remarry her if you're not a kohen. No, if you divorce her because of Shemra, you cannot. Mishum Neder, also if it was because of vow, also liyachs, not remarry her. If you divorce her because she has a vow, now remarry her. Now, there's going to be two primary interpretations for this halacha. Either because Mishum Kilkula, because what happens is, if he's allowed to remarry her, when he's going to find out that the rumors were not true or that she was mater her net, he's like, oh, I didn't know. If I would have known, I would never divorced you. And now that you're married to someone else, comes out that your children are mamzerim, and because it's a mekach toys. So I said, no. You can't remarry her. Don't come up with this mekach toys business. You divorce her, it's a done deal. That's one pshat. Or, no, a very different pshat. If that's why your husband's divorcing you, you're going to get it big. You cannot get remarried. So it's one's more about the man, one's more about the woman. That we don't want the Jewish women to be parrots in Arayis and Nadarim. Reb Meir says a different differentiation regarding the halacha of Nadarim. He says, if it's a neder that needs a chacham to be chayker and to be mater, then he cannot remarry her. Whereas, if he doesn't need a chacham and the husband himself can be mefer, then he could remarry. I'm going to explain exactly why would that be the dependent factor regarding if you could go ahead and remarry her or not. Also, the Gemara discussed regarding Hamoitzi Sishtim Mishum Alnus. Let's say she's an Alnus. She can't have children. And that's why he divorces her. If you could go ahead and remarry her, if you're going to run into the same problems that we said regarding these halachas of like Mishum Shemra and because of Neder. So we begin the current Daf Mem Hey Amid Beis, 11 lines up at the bottom of the Amid. We begin the Mishnah. Mishnah says, Hamoitzis Ishtar Mishum Shemra. If someone removes his wife, he divorces her because of a bad name. Meaning, there is rumors going around about her that she was Mizana. So the halacha says, Mishum Liyach says, now remarry her. So too Mishum Neder. Let's say he's divorcing her because she took a vow, and he says, I don't want a wife that's taking the darim. Out. Lo yachzer. He's not allowed to remarry her. So even if it turns out that the rumors were false or that the neder was permitted by a chacham, you cannot remarry her. As we mentioned yesterday, it's a machlekes hamaram that we'll see in the Gemara. There is one opinion that holds is because of kilkula, because what happens is he's going to claim that he divorced her by mistake. And there is a mandama that says for a different reason. It's a kanas. We don't want the Jewish women to be paras, to be breached in the areas of arayis, which is the Shemra and the Darim. And if that's why you're getting divorced, you cannot get remarried. That we'll see in the Gemara are two different interpretations for this halacha of why lo yachzer. Now, Yehuda, he says, and we're going to explain this all in the Gemara, he says, Kol neder sheyada b'rabim. If this is a neder that was vowed in public, so people know about it, so it's what's called a neder sheyada b'rabim, lo yachzer, then you cannot remarry her. Why? Because a neder shehud b'rabim, according to Rabbi Yehuda, doesn't have afara. You cannot nullify such a vow, as Rashi explains. Yehuda is not concerned for kilkula. He's not concerned because for kilkula, what does it help? It's all about the husband claiming. No, it's only that we don't want the Jewish women to be parts in the dharm. So therefore, if she took a neder b'rabim, so that's a breach in the dharm. The people hear about it. And therefore, that's when we penalized her. But for that if people don't know about it, where there is hafara, so then they didn't penalize her. So Yach says, and then he could go ahead and remarry her. So that's because his main concern is parutz parayis, and when it's parabim, so then that's something that is going to be a major breach. So that's when we say, okay, you can't get remarried. But if people don't know about it, and there is hafara over there, so then they didn't penalize them in that situation. Reb Meir, he says the following qualification. He says, Kol neder, and it gets a little bit complex of the next two opinions. He says, Kol neder shetzarech akiris chacham. Any vow that requires the analysis of a sage, meaning you have to go in front of the chacham to ask for an opening and regret, and the husband cannot be made for the neder, then lo yachzer. Why then could you not remarry? The Meir holds the reason is not like Rabbi Yehuda. He holds the reason is because of kilkula. So therefore, a neder that he cannot be made for, but a chacham could be matter, he later on could ruin the get after she gets married to someone else and say, wait a second, had I known that a chacham could be matter this, I would never have divorced you. So specifically by something that you need a chacham to be matter, that's where we say, no, you cannot get remarried, because if you could, then you're going to claim that as an excuse to say, had I known, and then you're going to ruin her. But if you don't need a chacham to be matter, rather he himself can be made for the neder, the husband has a right to just nullify a neder, then yachzer, then actually the chacham did not require to make it forbidden for him to be able to remarry her. Why? Because since he cannot ruin her and to say, had I known, what do you mean, had you known? This is this over the plate neder. You could have been made for, you weren't made for it yourself. Don't say had you known. You could have done this yourself. It's a DIY. So what do you don't have a claim. There's no problems that we're going to run into. So then, yeah, we don't have to make that you can't remarry. So you can remarry her because you wouldn't have the problem with kakula. Again, this is because the mayor holds the primary reasoning is the kakula reason. Yehuda, on the other hand, holds the reason is the paritz reason. So if it's in public, that's a pritzis, and in the darim, so then, but in private, no, you can go ahead and remarry her. Now, Amr Rebbe Lazar, so Rebbe Lazar's reading, he says, wait a second, to the contrary. He says, Loi asru zeh. He says, not true, Meir. They didn't say that the case of when you need a chacham to look into it, to permit it, that they said it's forbidden to remarry her. They only said that's forbidden only because of this case when you don't need a chacham. Meaning, as Rashi explains, when you need the chacham, we should not have been concerned for kilkel. It's not true. Remei was saying, that the whole thing is for kilkel. And kilkel is only when you need the chacham. I didn't know. If I would have known the chacham, you don't need a chacham. There's no kilkel because the guy. What do you mean? You could have done it yourself. You didn't do it. It's your own fault. So Rebbe Lazar just has a different svara. He says not true. When you need a chacham, there's no concern for kilkel. Because you cannot say, had I known that a chacham could be matrid, I would never have divorced you. Why not? That's the svara we said Remeir. No. Like Rashi says a word, a non-sahadi. We testify, and the Gemara is going to explain this, a man does not want his wife to be degraded in court in front of the chacham, to go to Bezdin to ask regarding her neder. Don't say, had you known, you would have wanted her to be matter and neder and go in front of the chacham. Doesn't want his wife to be degraded going in front of the court. It's only because of a neder that does not need a chacham, and the husband himself could be mefer. That then they said even the case of the chacham, they were going to, because of that case, that's why they said the case of the chacham is going to be aser. He shouldn't say, had I known that I could be mefer, I would never have divorced you. So he's coming from a totally different angle. The mayor said that the only problem is when you need chakiras chacham, and not when you don't. And that Rebbe Lezer says to him, no, punkt fakert. Yeah, both will be aser, but it's not true. It's the logic is the opposite way. Don't tell me when you need chakiras chacham, then we have to say that you could not be chayzer because we would have thought to say you would have claimed that I would have known I would never have divorced you. I would have had you go matter by the chacham. It's not true. You would never send her to the chacham, and you cannot make such a claim because a person does not want his wife to be degraded. And actually, to the contrary, when you yourself could be matter to be mefer, that's what we're concerned for. And actually, that's what lo yachse, because you're going to claim you didn't know that you could do that. And then because of that, we said, okay, once we're saying that's usher, we're not to get confused, we said also the case of the chacham that will make it usher. But the exact opposite, don't tell me the case of himself that you could be chayzer. No, that's the case of why we even said the chacham is like chayzer, because of this case too. And Amar B'yisi B'Rabbi Yehuda says, Maisa B'tzidon, there was a story in Tzidon, Be'echad she'amar le'ishtoi. Someone said to his wife, Kainim imeinim megarshach. He says, I'm taking a neder, and the Gemara is going to explain what the case is, if I don't divorce you. He seems to be addressing to Remeir that Remeir was saying that if you need chakiras chacham, lo yachze, yachze, and that he said, no, don't say that. Rabbi Yehuda's case differentiation, I guess the words would be possible, but that's not the way Rashi is explaining it. Rabbi Yehuda did talk about two different things. Neder sheyad b'ram lo yachze, but I wouldn't know how to translate what that would mean in Rabbi Yehuda. Lo asu zel mnezeh. They only made this one, which one? Berabim, because it would be hard to translate what that would mean in Rabbi Yehuda. The words could sound like that because Rabbi Yehuda is talking about two different variables, but it does sound like the way Rashi says it's going on Rameir. Now, Rabbi Yehuda says that Ma'aseh B'tzidin, that this guy said to his wife, "I'm taking that if I don't divorce you." Begish, and he divorces her. The Chacham permitted him to remarry her, which the Gemara is going to explain. What is he saying? What is he coming to tell us? And he says, what's the tikkun oilam over here? But this is unrelated to what we just talking about before. We're talking about the woman taking a neder. When she takes a neder, he divorces her, he cannot remarry her. Now you're talking about the husband taking a neder, and if I don't divorce you, and they divorced her, and then they can remarry her. The Gemara is going to explain exactly what is this case and what is it coming over here. But first, the Gemara explains the opening halacha of our Mishnah. We said that if he's moitzis ishta mishum shemra or because of neder lo yachser. So Rabbi Yosef ben Yumi Omer of Nachman. He says, "Who sha'amar, this is if he tells her when he's divorcing her, mishum shemra ani matziacha. You know why I'm divorcing you? Because of the rumors that are going on about you. Or it's Gitin Daf medav shem nedem ani matziacha. Because of the neder that you took, I'm divorcing you." That's where the Rabbanan said you now remarry her, because as we said, as we'll explain in a moment, what their concern is. But if he didn't say, then he's allowed to remarry her. So the Gemara explains, because Ksavar of Nachman holds timer. The reason of the Mishnah, what's the reason is Mishum Kilkula, is that this former husband should not ruin her on her new husband when she gets married to someone else. And you can say, wait a second, had I known that these rumors were false, or the neder that you made could be nullified, they give me 100 mana, I would never have divorced you. And that's what I said when I divorced you. I told you, honey, that it's because of this that I'm divorcing you. And when I divorced you, I had in mind to take you back if I would have known it was false. Comes out, the get is batal, and the children are mamzer. That's the words Rashi uses. Taisa says, no, this concern is really just for rumors, not literally get batal and mamzerim. He didn't say almanas, they make a stipulation, but it means to say that, it's still going to be spreading rumors about that. Well, I don't know. Everyone's going to say, you heard this woman really, she's really married and whatever. So it's really for that. So therefore, we tell him before the divorce, wait a second, Rabbi, you should know, you're never going to be able to remarry her. That's what they tell him. So you can't say anymore that, had I known, because you know that you're not going to be able to remarry her, even if she doesn't get remarried to someone else. And you weren't concerned to go and check into these rumors to make sure that if they were false or true. You're obviously revealing that you don't really care so much about it. Don't tell me, had I known, I would never have done such a thing. That's the reason why we say lo yachzer, is to avoid this problem. We tell you you're not going to be able to remarry her. So don't come up later on with this tiritzim to say that, had I known. That's to avoid the problem of the kilkel that could happen to this woman. That's why, says the Gemara, if he tells her at the time of divorce, it's because of the rumors, it's because of the nedarim, matzvah he'll be able to ruin her. Because, yes, I told you, remember I said this in Bezdin, but if not, he can't ruin her because he didn't say he's divorcing her because of bad rumors, and since he cannot ruin her when she gets remarried, so then we don't have to make it forbidden him to remarry her until she doesn't get remarried, because the reason why we have to say it is not to allow the kilkel. But if it's not going to be kilkel, then we have no problem letting you remarry her. So this is all one version of the interpretation that the reasoning of the halacha of the Mishnah is because of kilkula. But now, ikadamri, there are those that say another version of Omer of Yosef ben Yumi Omer of Nachman. Again, the same Amoira says a different version. That actually, tzarech sheyoimala, a very different tzarech sheyoimala. He has to tell her, Havidas, you should know, you know why I'm divorcing you? Because of the rumors. And because of that I'm divorcing you. Meaning, as Rashi explains, unlike the first version that said that the halacha only applies when he says it, the second version of Nachman is saying, no, you need to say this when you're divorcing her. The Chum instituted this to the guy who's divorcing her to say it like this. Now, whether he said it or didn't, he cannot remarry her. It's just we're telling you that you should say it. Why? Because Kesava, this version of Nachman holds time of the reason that you're not allowed to remarry her. Why is that? It's because of a knas. We don't want the Jewish women to be breached in the areas of immorality and the vows. You have to tell her to say, this is your punishment. The name is the get happening. So it's to reinforce this that we don't want this to happen. So even if you said it or not, unlike the first version, you cannot remarry because that's the knas. But those are the two different versions of the halacha of the Mishnah, which is we mentioned in Rashi already in the Mishnah, are the two primary reasonings being brought up here, which Rav Nachman has this in two different versions of what's the opinion of the Tanna Kama. Right? What in the get? No.
Rabbi, why wouldn't he bring her to Meisata? Is it no Edis?
Yeah. So you have to have kina and stira and whatever. You have to. Here's just rumors.
So this is just based on rumors. He
Yeah.
can be Mekarisha.
He could divorce her, but that's the thing. If she's gonna get remarried, he's gonna say,
"How?" She's Malka and she says it's not true. It's based and it's not true.
Well, she could say whatever she wants, but he's heard rumors and he's divorcing her because of that. And if we're gonna let him get remarried to her, then he's gonna say later on, had I known that it wasn't true, I would never have divorced you. And now there's gonna be a whole rumor on her remarriage to this other person, and all her kid and Allah are gonna be rumored to be mamzer. That's the concern. Now, the Gemara says, Tani Kalish Nikama, but Tani Kalish Brasa, we have actually brises like both of these versions of Rav Nachman in the Halacha of our Mishnah. As the Gemara explains. Tani Kalish Nikama, we have a brise like the first version that says, Amr Meir. So, why did they say, coming to explain the rationale of our Mishnah? Some of the divorce says his wife because of a bad name. Lo yachzir, now I'll remarry her. Umishum neder lo yachzir, because of a neder, now I'll remarry her. Oh, so it says, because Shema telech v'tinas la'achar, she might go and get remarried to someone else. It's going to come out that the rumors of the Shemra were false, or let's say regarding the neder that was permitted. Then he's going to say, had I known that this would be the way, if they would have given me 100 mana, I would never have divorced her. But then to get bottle, it comes out the get is nullified. But now mamzer, now her children from the second marriage is mamzer. So that's what Rashi and Taisus. That's what I said. Rashi made it sound like as if it literally was like the words of the Gemara. But Taisus is nearer that the chashas do einikim las ba'alma. It's just a rumor.
So that could be in any case. Let's say his wife doesn't feel well and he gives her a get, and then she becomes weak. Oh, I'm sure I don't know. So anytime can a person be battle a get or not? That's how all matter.
Right.
Any condition. So it's not only over here in the rumor.
Right. Yeah, but yeah, exactly. I guess, but there would be certain situations that would be more concerning for that, and we would institute that. And then we're going to see the Gemara will have regarding islanders. Yeah, there are cases like that. And so therefore we tell him, therefore they tell him before the divorce, I want you to know, if you're divorcing her because of a bad name, you're not able to remarry her. Because of a vow, you can't remarry her. And since he's not concerned, then he divorced her anyway, so he can't ruin her anymore, because he revealed his intention that she's not so dear to him. But al kapanim, you see that the reasoning of why we instituted a lo yachzer was to avoid the problem of kilkul. That's the first version of Nachman. The second one, Tani Kalish Nebraser, the second brisa. Amar Abelazar Bar Yisrael said, "Nema Amar, why did they say lo yachzer, be divorced her wife because of a bad name, he can't remarry her? Because of a he can't remarry her. We won't want them to be breached in these areas. That they tell him, tell her, you should know, you know I'm divorcing you because of this, and this is your punishment, and this is your knas, and that's why they're letting her know this. So again, those are two different pshatim. Now, the next opinion we said in the Mishnah, which we said we'll explain, he says, depends. A neder that we're gonna, you can't remarry her if kol neder sheyada b'rabim, if it's one that the public knows about, which there's no hafara, so it's a very severe type of a neder, it's a big breach, it's paritz b'nedarim, lo yachs, you can't remarry her. Shloya b'rabim, people don't know about it, something you can be made for. No, a klein neder, yachs, we're not going to penalize her in that type of situation. Which the Gemara says, my time Rabbi Yehuda, what's the reason of Yehuda? Which, as Rashi explains, that he says that a neder sheyada b'rabim doesn't have a farah, and since it doesn't have a farah, it can't be made for that. There's a paritz, a pritza, so therefore you can't remarry her. Where does he know this? Because the Chsiva says a pasuk in Yeshua. It says, "B'leihikum b'nei Yisrael." This refers to the Gevinim. That the what happened was that the Gevinim they were deceptive, and they fooled the Jewish people that they came from an Eretz or Chayka, that really they were from the land of Canaan. They were supposed to wipe them out. So the Jewish people didn't kill them out, because the princes of the assembly of the Jewish people swore to them, which, now Rashi explains, really, they should have been shoyal on their shvuah. They should have undone it, if not for the fact they already took the neder b'rabim. It was a public neder that they took. So you see, says Yishmael Levi, the source of Rabbi Yehuda, that if it's a neder that's hud b'rabim, in la'afara. Says the Gemara Rabbanan that they say that no, you could be made for neder b'rabim. Therefore, they disagree with Yehuda's halacha. Hasam over there, that's not because that there's no hafara because it was done in public. No, you don't even need hafara, Because Michal Shvu Alai Klal, you think that their oath even took effect at all? It was a mistaken oath. It was a Shvu B'tois. Because since they said to them, that may edit we came from a distant land, they didn't come. You're telling me that they couldn't be made for it because of Neder Shvun Barab? It told us it didn't even need Hafara. It wasn't even a Shvu in the first place because they were lying. Well, they can't look at the incident. The question becomes, so why didn't they kill at the Gevinim? That's Mishum Kedushas Hashem, because the sanctification of God's name that the non-Jews shouldn't say. What I mean, they violated the oath. We saw it was on the front page. The Jews made an oath to the Gevinim, and then they wiped them out. So because of Kedushas Hashem, but not really because it was a Neder Shvud Barab. Yeah, they're not quoted here as a specific opinion, but it seems like we're in Yehuda saying this, that the Rabbanan, which Rabbanan would it be that disagree with him? That's what Taisa seems to discuss regarding who the Rabbanan are. Haid the Kama B'Rabban, Haid Rabbi Rabbi Lazar. So Taisa discusses who the Rabbanan are. Now, the Gemara says, Kama Rabbim. So, parenthetically, once we're discussing this opinion of Rabbi Yehuda, that if the Neder Shud B'Rabim in La'afara, so what's considered a Rabbim? What's considered public? So if Nachman says Gimel, 3 people. If you make it from the 3 people, you cannot be Mefer. Yitzchak Rama says Asara, 10 people. So the Gemara explains. Nachman Gimel, he says, where do I get the number 3 from? Because when it says in the Torah, Yomim Rabbim, that it was many days, which this is talking about a different area of halacha. It's by a Zavha. The Gemara at the end of Nida Darshans, that what does it mean a woman becomes a Zavha? She has a flow of 3 days. How do we know 3 days? Because it says Yomim, plural 2, days. Rabbim, many, is Gimel 3. But one thing we see, the word Rabbim is 3. So that's how we know that a Rabbim is 3. Yitzchak says, no, Asar means 10 because the Chsiv Eida. We know the famous halacha of a minyan from the Meraglim, that it says Eida Hara Hazais, which that's how we know that a Dovish Begdusha, which also says the word Eida, also has to have a minyan people, because we exclude Yeshua and Kalev from the 12 Meraglim, so it was 10. So we see over there that a Rabbim, a minyan, is 10. Zeros and Neder Shud B'Rabbim would have to be 10. Again, that seems to be the machlokes regarding what are you basing on when you say a Rabbim? Would that be 3 or 10? Now, the next opinion in the Mishnah, he had said, it depends what type of neder you cannot remarry her for. Kol neder shetzarach, he said, if it's a neder that requires a chakiras a chacham, if it can only be nullified by a chacham and not by the husband, then they may not remarry. But if she'in the tzarach chakiras chacham, but if it does not need the chacham, it can even nullify the husband, then they may remarry. And then we had Rabbi Lazar, who disagreed, v'chulu, that he says, no, what are you talking about? Really, if it needs chakiras chacham, there we should allow you to remarry her. It's only because of ein tzarach chakiras chacham, which that's willo yachzer. That's why we made chakiras chacham also aser. But don't tell me that it's the exact opposite of you. Not in actuality, it's going to be closer because we're going to say both are aser. But don't tell me the other way around. Now, Tanya in the Braisa, Rabbi Lazar Eimer, he says lo yasru tzarach. He says they didn't say the case when you need the chacham is forbidden. Only because the case that you don't need. So it says the Gemara b'may kemeflagi. What is the machlekes dependent on? So the Gemara explains. With Meir Sabi, he holds adam reitzah should dispass the ishta bevesna. A person would be willing, doesn't mind if his wife becomes degraded in court. In other words, it doesn't bother him. So therefore, the case of when you need a chacham to be mated the neder, he could ruin her because he could claim, of course I would have sent my wife to the chacham. Had I known that she doesn't have to be forbidden in strawberries for the rest of her life, I would have said, of course. What is it? I just don't want to eat nadranas. I didn't know. And he could make such a claim because a husband would be willing to have her degraded. But Rabbi Lazar Sabi holds no. The person wouldn't want. You can't make such a claim because no husband wants his wife to just go there and wait there like a Mecca, like they're sitting there, come and going. That doesn't want that. You can't make such a claim. So really, the chakiras chacham would be really allowed to be yachzer because you can't make such a claim. It's only because of when you yourself, which he holds, a person could make such a claim, not like Reb Meir. A person could say, I didn't know I could be made for neder for halucha, but what do I know, right? So then that's why layachs. So therefore, we made also chakiras chacham into layachs. Now then the Mishnah went on to say, I'm a Bisma Yehuda. It says Ma'aseh b'Tzidon v'chulu was a story in Tzidon where the husband took a neder, and they allowed him to get remarried. So he said, "My Tana, what did we learn previously regarding a neder that he made, the Tani Maisa, that we would say a story about that? We were only talking about the dorm that she made, and usually you bring a masa to illustrate what was previously said as halacha." So the Gemara says, "Chasur mechser." There are words missing. For then this I'm supposed to read the Mishnah. But remember when we say this in the Mishnah that if a neder was made and that's why the divorce is happening, that you cannot get remarried, that's kishanadra when she took the neder, as we explained the reasonings for those. Another ihu, but if he took a neder, and that's why he divorced her, yachser. If he wants to remarry, because no concern about kilkel. Kilkel was only if I would have known that your neder could be permitted. What does it have to do with his own self? Which for Amar B'Yisrael Yehuda says Meisid not mitzidan, and that was also a story in Tzidan. When the man tells his wife, taking a neder if I don't divorce you, and therefore he divorced her because or else he's going to be usher in certain things. He doesn't want to be usher in them. He says, if I don't divorce you, I can't go and I can't eat schnitzel anymore on Thursday nights, and he got to have a schnitzel. So he divorces her. But the Chacham permitted him to remarry her. So we get into Tamid Beis. So the Gemara explains, what is this case talking about? My kainim. Kainim is a terminology of hektish, where he makes something forbidden himself like hektish. And what did he make forbidden himself? He says simply, he says, all the produce in the world will be forbidden on me if I don't divorce you. So basically what he was saying was that, yeah, I'm making these stuff into hektish on me if I don't divorce you. So he went ahead to divorce her. He didn't want to be usher in all Perish Ba'il. Right. So the usually that Tosfos discusses those types of things about it. If would the gifts to be kol, is that could he eat other things besides peiros? Doesn't mean kol machal. It's called peiros, right? If that's considered like not sleeping for 3 days, right? But he could eat other things. So the Mishnah said for that type of neder, what happened was that they permitted him to go ahead and remarry her. Says Pshita, obviously, what would the concerns be? There's no kilkel, no parrots, benedam, b'nei Yisrael parrots, benedam rice. So the says, Madam, what would you say? Ligzim Shem Reb Nasan. We should be concerned for Allah Reb Nasan. Can you tell me in the Bryce Reb Nasan? He says, Hanoidir. If someone takes a neder, kilabanam bama. It's as if he has built a private altar when altars are forbidden, and v'hamakaimai, and whoever fulfills it, meaning if he doesn't go and undo the neder by going to a chacham to matrit, it's kilhikr carbon. Like he went through with it. He brought a carbon on now the bama, and he concluded his sin because now he's getting himself accustomed to taking the dharm. And here, since he's mekayim his neder, so you would think, okay, we should penalize him that he should not be able to remarry her because of his own sin in the dharm. That's the chiddush of the Mishnah is that no, we're not going to penalize him. He could remarry his wife. And the Mishnah concludes, Mipnei tikkun olam. Says, what? My tikkun olam mikah. This that we let him get remarried to her, there's a tikkun olam. What's the tikkun olam? So the Amar said, no, it's a reisha. It's going on the reisha. We had said that by which she takes Nadarm, or if she had a bad name about some type of znuz, he's not remarry her. The Mishnah is concluding that halach is because of tikkun olam, either because of kilkel, that we don't want to ruin her, or because of that they shouldn't be parts by rayis and the dar. Rabbi Shloimy says no. Lo'ilma seifa. It's going on the last thing we just said. What it's supposed to say is when we say mishum tikkun olam, we mean that ain bezumnei tikkun olam. In other words, we're trying to say that the chacham permitted him to remarry her mibnei tikkun olam, meaning which the whole reason of the halacha was taken on, which you don't have over here, is therefore he's allowed to go ahead and remarry her. Now that we continue the halacha, the next Mishnah, which has a similar theme to our previous Mishnah, which actually the Gemara is going to ask a contradiction from the two Mishnayos. Hamaytis ishte. Someone divorces his wife with a get, mishum islandness, where he didn't know this when he got married, but he finds out. He says, "Wait a second, you're not a regular woman. You can't have children." Now, still, even though he didn't know this when he got married, it requires a get because, as Rashi explains, based on the Gemara Ksubas Daf Ayin Gimel, a person would not make all his bilas nus. They were married already 3 years. To go for testing and say you're an islandess. Islandess? I would never have married an islandess. Yeah, but that comes out the past 3 years that you were intimate. You were all nus. That person wouldn't want to make it into his nus. So his bia was l'shem kedushin, but at the same time he doesn't want to stay married to her, so he's divorcing her. So we won't call it a total mekach tois. Now if that's the case, Rabbi Yomi says lo yachzer. You can never remarry her. You divorce this woman because you're not. Just watch out. You cannot remarry her. Why? What's going to happen is like this. She's some other guy is going to snatch this great girl. She's going to have a child with that person. He's say, "Whoa! Had I known that, you give me all the money in the world, I would never have divorced you." And the whole point why I divorced you was because if you would ever bring signs of having a child, of course I would remarry you. Had I known that you're not going to come back to me, you're going to fit to have a child, I would never divorce you. So therefore they tell me before, hey, Rabbi Yid, listen up. I want you to know, if you're divorcing your wife because of an illness, you can never, ever take her back. Because or else you're going to run into the problem of saying, oh, I didn't know, whatever. No, you can't. So don't come up with mekachtois types of on the get, like I did, so to ruin her when she gets remarried to someone else. They said no yachzer. You could remarry her because it's very simply they're not concerned for kilkel. They're not concerned for this whole thing, him saying, had I known, whatever, and making bunem mamzerim. Now, nisis la'acher, let's say she got married to someone else. And then she actually had children from this other husband. Now, vitavaz ksubasa. What happens is that she goes to the first husband and says, you divorced me without a ksuba because of this partial mekach tois. Because illness. You didn't get married to an illness. Now, it's not total like Rash wash out because he doesn't want to make his be his nus, but it's enough to say, I don't have to pay you out because it's a mekach tois. So she says, wait a second. No mekach tois. I'm not an islandess. Look, I have 7 kids from the second husband. Pay me up the ksuba. And that Rabbi Yehuda, and Daf Rabbi Yehuda, who is chayish for kilkel, oimala, they tell her, wait a second. It's like a sharp line. You're being silent is better than your words because he's going to say, wait a second. Had I known what's going to happen at the end, then I'm going to have to give you the ksuba. I would never have divorced you. So shvaig, better. Which Tracy discusses says, what do we say? We're just I'm saying, forget about what he would say. What are we saying? Isn't it a mekach tois then? Okay, so Tracy discusses that. But akabanim, the Rebbe Yehuda says, be quiet because if you're going to start opening your mouth, you're going to make it worse for yourself because he's going to say, oh yeah, Taki want the ksuba. I would never have done that. And then again, we would run into the problem about kilkum. What do you mean? Yeah, it could be his problem, but I'm saying.
It's his problem.
Oh, you mean say if it's like you mean that he can have.
What if he had kids without a wife?
Right, but he's I can problem. If I would have known, he's the same guy. The same guy says, if I would have known that guy, I don't have problems, and I would never have done such a thing. I would have kept you. Al Kapanim. So the Gemara says, "Remember, is this to say?" The Gemara has a contradiction between this Mishnah and the previous Mishnah. Is this to say that Rabbi Yehuda in our Mishnah? What does he say? He says, "Oh, if you're divorcing her for illness, you can't remarry her. Why? Obviously, because chayish like a kula." We learn from what he's saying that if he wants to say that I divorced you because of illness, and now I see you're not an illness, he would ruin her. So therefore, we have to institute that you cannot remarry her, so we don't run into that problem. Okay, and for Rabban l'chayish like a kula, obviously Rabban who say that no, if you divorce her because now you can remarry her. I'm not concerned that she can get remarried to someone else and then you're going to ruin her. Problem is, learn the exact opposite in the previous Mishnah. We learned in the Mishnah on Memheim and Beis said Hamoitzis Ishta Mishim Shemra. We said if someone divorces his wife because of a bad name, because of rumors, Le'achzanal remarry her. Mishim Neder, because Neder, Le'achzanal remarry her. Rabbi Yehuda, what did he say in that Mishnah? He said, Kol Neder Shiyod B'Rabim. It says if it's a well publicized Neder, we said Le'achza because we said he holds because of Knas, because it's a big pirza. This woman's making out in the public in the middle of the kiddush. She goes, yeah, Chamacha Neder, a pritzis in the dark. But we said, V'shloyad b'rabim, said, let the people don't know about it. She made it at home, whatever. Said, Yachzil, you're allowed to remarry her. Wait a second. You're allowed to remarry her, but you're going to end up claiming that had I known she took a neder, obviously you're not concerned for kilkel. Because if kilkel would be even a private neder. So we see, Rabbanan chayshil kikula. The Rabbanan who don't make that differentiation, they say any neder, obviously they're concerned for kilkel. Rabbi Yehuda lo chayshil kikula. Rabbi Yehuda is not concerned for kilkel. Well, that's the exact opposite of what they say in this Mishnah. Rabbi Yehuda is chayish, Rabbanan not chayish. How do we resolve this contradiction? So Shmuel says, Epoch. You're right, you have to switch it around in our Mishnah. You have to say, not Rabbi Yehuda says, Lo yachzeh b'da alnus. His Chacham say, Lo yachzeh b'da alnus. Because they are the ones who chayish v'kakula. Says, well, wait a second, but I'm going to tell you Seifa. But read the end of our Mishnah. Our Mishnah said that this is la'achar if she gets married to someone else, and she has children from him. V'itav asks Abbas and she's claiming Ksuba. Amr Reb Yehuda. Reb Yehuda is the one that says, hey, Rebbetzin, your silence is better than your words. Wait a second. Why? Because he's going to end up saying, had I known, I would not. That's kilkul. Obviously, Reb Yehuda is one. How you tell me that? That also you should switch around. No, it's not Reb Yehuda who said that. It's the Chacham who said that. That's one approach. Abayama, he comes up with a different approach. He says, no, you don't have to switch it around. And yes, as you see in our Mishnah, Rabbi Yehuda most definitely is concerned for kilkul. That's why if you divorce her because of illness, we tell him, Rabbi Yehuda, you're not going to remarry her. But Rabbi Yehuda Bahi, regarding the Mishnah on Daf Memheim Beis, regarding the case of Neder, the reason why he was not concerned over there is because he holds there's no kilkul over there. Why not? Why isn't there kilkul? He'll say, had I known. No, there's no had I known. Why is there no had I knowns? Because Savalakre Meir, Savalakre Balaz, this gets a little bit, you have to hold cup for the two opinions he's going to go like. Based on these two opinions, he won't have any excuses. You're right, generally we are concerned with kilkul of excuses, but he won't have any excuses. Why not? Because Bit Sarach, a neder that needs a Akiris Chacham, that needs the Chacham to go to the Rav, Savalakre Balaz, he'll take Rebbe Lazar. A person wouldn't want his wife to be degraded in court. You can't tell me, had I known. You would never have done such a thing. You never let your wife go to the Rav. So don't tell me that you would say, had I known. You never let it. So that's out the door. So there's no concern for kilkul of the chacham. And also, b'she'ena tzarach, in the case when you don't need the chacham, when the husband himself can be mefer, so like Reb Meir, Reb Meir in the Mishnah said that the husband would never make a mistake by a neder that he himself could be mefer. He can't say, oh, had I known I could do such a thing, I would never divorce her. No, you knew those things. You know you could do it, and you didn't. That means you didn't care. So therefore, that's why it's only berjabim the Yehuda will hold that you can't remarry because of knas. But because of kilkul, you're right. He does hold of kilkul as you see in the Mishnah over here. But there's no kilkul over there. Why not? He'll say, had I known. There's no had I known. In public, you would never have done such. For the Rav, you would never have done. For yourself, you knew you could do it. So therefore, that's like a chap that there's no problem with kilkul in that Mishnah according to Rabbi Yehuda. Now, Rabbi just finishes off the conversation. Says, wait a second. Rabbi Yehuda kasha, what? Rabban loy kasha? All you did was you answered the question of Yehuda. But we have a contradiction of opinion Rabbanan. Rabbanan Mishnah is saying that we're not concerned with kilkul. Previous Mishnah is saying we are concerned with kilkul. How do you answer that? So the Rabbi says, okay, let's finish it up. Rabbi Yehuda loy kasha condition like we answered, which we said that yeah, he is chayish for kilkul like we see in our Mishnah. But the previous Mishnah there was no kilkul. Rabban loy kasha, it's also no difficulty because man chachamim, who's a chacham in our Mishnah that say that if you're divorcing her for illness, that you can remarry her, it's Reb Meir. Which Reb Meir? The man that he says in Mesachas Kedushin of Samach Aleph and Aleph, being a tonight kafel. You need to have a double bind condition, meaning any stipulation that's not doubled the way it was with Moshe Rabbeinu and the tribe of Gad and Reuven, that if they're going to go to fight in Eretz Yisrael, then yes. If they're not going to go, then not. If you don't do both sides, it's not a stipulation. Where he didn't double his condition, meaning he didn't say when they divorced her, but the word, you should know, because you're an illness, I'm divorcing you. But he did not say that if you're not an illness, it's not going to be a get. So if it's going to be a get, even if she's not an illness, and they cannot ruin her, because it wasn't a double get. So, thank you to any time for hosting us. I guess we'll do the next mission now for the next Daf.